The envelope sat like a cruel joke on Sophie's worn-out wooden table. The golden lettering shimmered in the dim light of her small apartment. She didn't even need to open it to know who it was from. The Harrington family seal embossed on the wax gave it away instantly. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal and unfolded the card. The words were crisp, elegant, and cutting. Alexander Harrington and Veronica Chambers request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. Sophie let out a sharp laugh, though it carried more pain than amusement. Of course, he would. Alexander wasn't inviting her out of kindness. No, this was a display, a performance. A cruel reminder of everything she had lost. 2 years ago, Sophie had been Mrs. Harrington, wife to one of the wealthiest heirs in the city. Their love story had started with fire and passion, college sweethearts who had defied the odds. But that fire burned out quickly when her family's small business collapsed, and financial scandals forced her into bankruptcy. Overnight, the glamorous life Alexander had promised her turned into what he called a burden. He had humiliated her in the divorce. No settlement. No compassion. No regard for the vows they once exchanged. He stripped her of her dignity and left her with nothing but a broken heart. What Alexander didn't know was that Sophie had discovered she was pregnant just days after the divorce papers were finalized. Too proud, too wounded, she hadn't gone back to him. Instead, she carried her twins quietly, working odd jobs, sacrificing sleep, and pouring all the love she had into raising them. Her children, Emma and Ethan, had become her strength, the reason she hadn't crumbled completely. Now, staring at the gold-engraved invitation, Sophie felt anger boiling beneath her skin. Alexander wasn't just marrying again, he was parading his happiness in front of her. Mocking her. But Sophie wasn't the same broken woman he left behind. She had rebuilt herself. Slowly, quietly, she had regained her confidence, her strength. And now she had too little reasons to face him without fear. She smiled faintly, the corner of her lips curving upward as her twins ran into the kitchen, their laughter filling the air. "Mommy, look!" Ethan waved a crayon drawing in the air, a stick figure family with "me plus Emma plus mommy" scrawled across the top. Sophie knelt, hugging them both tightly. "Would you like to meet your father?" she whispered, her voice soft but steady. The twins looked at her with wide eyes, then nodded eagerly, though they didn't really understand what she meant. "Yes," Sophie murmured to herself, determination hardening in her chest. "If Alexander wants me there, then I'll go. But I won't go alone." The wedding day arrived in a blaze of extravagance. The cathedral was decorated with golden drapes, roses spilling from crystal vases, and a red carpet stretching toward the altar. Luxury cars lined the street, dropping off guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits. Alexander Harrington stood tall at the altar, dressed in a sharp black tuxedo. His face was smug, his dark eyes sweeping the room as he basked in the attention. He had envisioned this moment, his ex-wife tucked away in the shadows, watching him move on with someone wealthier, more beautiful, more worthy. "She'll see what she missed out on," he muttered to his groomsmen, smirking. But outside, the rumble of a sleek black limousine drew everyone's attention. Guests craned their necks, whispering as the car door opened. And then Sophie stepped out. She was radiant. Her gown shimmered with understated elegance, hugging her figure perfectly. Her hair, styled in soft waves, glowed under the golden lights. But what stole the breath from the crowd wasn't just her transformation. It was the two children who stepped out beside her. Emma and Ethan, dressed in miniature tuxedos and gowns, clutched her hands, their curious eyes wide as they looked at the grand building. The resemblance was undeniable. Alexander's jawline, his sharp eyes, even the faint curl in their hair. They were his mirror image. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "Are those his children?" someone whispered. "They look exactly like Alexander," another voice hissed. The whispers grew louder, people snapping photos, their eyes darting between the groom and the unexpected arrivals. Inside, Alexander's smug smile faltered. His jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening as he clenched the edge of the podium. He recognized them instantly. His children. The twins he never knew existed. Sophie walked down the aisle, not to him, but gracefully toward the front rows. Her chin was lifted, her presence commanding. The twins clung to her dress, drawing gasps and stares as they moved. Alexander's bride-to-be, Veronica, leaned toward him, her perfect smile trembling. "Alex, what is this?" she whispered sharply. But he had no answer. Sophie reached the front, her gaze locking with Alexander's. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, calm but laced with quiet triumph. "Congratulations on your wedding," she said softly, but her words carried across the cathedral like a dagger. Then she turned, bending down to her twins. "Darlings, this is your father." The crowd erupted in murmurs, cameras flashing as the shocking revelation spread like wildfire. Veronica's face blanched, her hands trembling as she stared at Alexander in disbelief. "Father," she hissed. "You have children?" Alexander's throat went dry. His carefully constructed image, his power, his prestige, his spotless reputation was unraveling before his eyes. All because of the woman he thought he had destroyed. Sophie, however, remained calm. She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood tall, her children clinging to her, her dignity shining brighter than all the diamonds in the room. For once, Alexander was the one being mocked, not by words, but by the undeniable truth he had tried to bury. And as Sophie kissed the tops of her children's heads and sat gracefully in the front pew, she whispered to them, loud enough for the people around her to hear. "Come on, my loves. Let's watch your father's wedding together." The final blow landed, and Alexander's world collapsed. The whispers became judgmental stares. Veronica's family looked outraged, guests exchanged scandalized looks, and the media cameras captured every second of his humiliation. Sophie had walked into his wedding with nothing but her children and her dignity, and left him stripped of both his pride and his control. In the end, the billionaire who wanted to mock his poor ex-wife became the one mocked by fate itself. Sophie never expected her past to find her in a golden envelope. She stared at the heavy cardstock on her small kitchen table, its edges glinting in the evening light. The Harrington family seal pressed in wax mocked her before she even opened it. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal. The elegant script inside read: "Alexander Harrington and Veronica Chambers request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony." Sophie laughed bitterly. Of course. It was exactly the kind of thing Alexander would do, parade his new life before her like a trophy. 2 years ago, Sophie had been the woman at his side. She and Alexander had met in college, when he wasn't yet the billionaire heir but just a charming, ambitious young man with dreams. She'd fallen for his confidence, his warmth, the way he promised to shield her from the world. For a time, he had been everything she wanted. But marriage had stripped away the illusion. When Sophie's family's small business crumbled, Alexander showed his true face. To him, love without wealth was worthless. He had tossed her aside, calling her a weight dragging him down. Their divorce had been brutal, with no settlement, no compassion. He left her with nothing but a broken heart and bitter memories. What he never knew, what he had never cared to find out, was that Sophie had discovered she was pregnant after the papers were signed. She hadn't begged him to stay or to support her. Her pride wouldn't allow it. Instead, she carried her twins alone, enduring sleepless nights, cheap apartments, and exhausting jobs to give them a life filled with love. Her children, Emma and Ethan, were her pride and strength. They had his dark hair, his sharp eyes, even his dimpled smile. Every time she looked at them, she was reminded of him. But unlike him, they never made her feel small. Now, holding the invitation, Sophie knew exactly why Alexander had sent it. It wasn't kindness, it was cruelty. He wanted her to walk into his glamorous wedding as the poor, discarded ex-wife, so he could revel in her humiliation. But Alexander didn't know the woman she had become. He didn't know the strength she carried, or the little hands that held hers when nights were darkest. "Mommy, look." Ethan's voice broke her thoughts. He came running with a drawing in his hand, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a bright sun. He had scrawled in crooked letters, "Me, Emma, Mommy." Sophie's eyes softened. She pulled Ethan and Emma into her arms, kissing their heads. "Would you like to meet your father?" she whispered. The twins blinked up at her, curious but excited. They'd only ever asked a few questions about him, and Sophie had always answered gently, never with bitterness. Now, maybe it was time. She set the invitation down, a quiet fire lighting in her chest. If Alexander wants me there, she murmured, then he'll get more than he bargained for. Part 2, the wedding that shattered his pride. The Harrington wedding was the event of the year. The cathedral gleamed with golden drapes, crystal chandeliers, and roses arranged in towering vases. A red carpet rolled down the aisle, and photographers flashed cameras as society's elite swept in wearing diamonds and tailored suits. At the altar, Alexander Harrington stood with confidence radiating from every polished detail of his tuxedo. His bride-to-be, Veronica Chambers, was a vision in silk and lace, her family watching proudly from the front. Alexander smirked to himself, imagining Sophie slipping quietly into the back row, dwarfed by the glitter and wealth around her. He could almost picture her face, resentful, small, invisible. The thought thrilled him. But then the heavy cathedral doors opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd as a sleek black limousine rolled up outside. The chauffeur stepped out and opened the door, and the woman who emerged silenced the entire room. Sophie. Her gown was elegant and perfectly cut, her hair styled in soft waves, her presence commanding. She looked nothing like the broken woman he had cast aside. But it wasn't just her transformation that stunned everyone. 2 children stepped out of the limo behind her, twins, no more than 4 years old, dressed neatly in miniature tuxedos and gowns. They clutched Sophie's hands as she guided them into the cathedral. The whispers spread like wildfire. Are those Alexander's? They look exactly like him. My God, the resemblance is uncanny. Alexander's smile froze. His chest tightened as his eyes locked onto the children. The resemblance was undeniable. His jawline. His eyes. His dimpled grin. Panic surged through him. Sophie didn't look at him as she walked gracefully down the aisle, her head high. She didn't shrink, didn't hide. She took a seat in the front row, the twins sitting proudly beside her. Veronica's hand gripped Alexander's arm like a claw. Alex, she whispered harshly. What is this? Who are those children? Alexander's mouth went dry. He had no answer. Finally, Sophie raised her eyes to him, calm and unwavering. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, one that carried both pain and triumph. She bent down to her twins, her voice soft but clear enough to be heard by those nearest. Darlings, she said, this is your father. The words exploded in the cathedral. Gasps, murmurs, judgmental stares, all of it crashed over Alexander in waves. The Harrington family shifted uncomfortably, Veronica's family looked outraged, and cameras clicked furiously, capturing the billionaire's humiliation. Veronica's face twisted, her perfect composure crumbling. You have children, she hissed, her voice sharp enough to pierce the whispers. And you never told me? Alexander tried to speak, but nothing came out. His carefully built empire of appearances was collapsing before his eyes. Meanwhile, Sophie sat tall, her children pressed close to her. She didn't gloat, didn't shout. Her dignity spoke louder than anything she could have said. She kissed the tops of her twins' heads and whispered just loud enough for those around her. Let's watch your father's wedding together. The words struck like a dagger. For the first time in his life, Alexander Harrington wasn't the one in control. He had invited Sophie to mock her, but she had turned his grand spectacle into his greatest humiliation. And as the whispers grew, as Veronica pulled away in fury, as cameras flashed relentlessly, Alexander realized the truth. The woman he thought he had broken was the one who had just destroyed him.